Donald Trump's important decision.
But today we're going to talk about something else.
In Russia, the American president is being mocked.
50 days were before, and there were 24 hours, and there were 100 days.
I'm Albina Piderniak. We will analyze the news of Ukraine and the world together. U.S. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is halting the Graham and Blumenthal bill that would impose sanctions on Russia and its allies. The senator's decision comes after President Donald Trump set a 50-day deadline for a peace deal over the war in Ukraine.
If at some point the president decides it makes sense and adds the value and leverage he needs in negotiations to move the bill forward, then we will do it when we are ready.
Earlier, Senators Graham and Blumenthal supported Trump's tariff threat against Russia and his decision to send weapons to Ukraine through NATO. Trump said that imposing a 500% tariff on imports was unnecessary, since his proposed 100% tariff would serve the same function.
However, the final hammer that will end this war will be tariffs against countries like China, India and Brazil, which support Putin's war machine by buying cheap Russian oil and gas. The goal is not to increase tariffs and sanctions. The goal is to force Putin to the peace table.
I'd like to remind you that the bill initiated by Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal provides for the toughest economic sanctions against Russia to date. This bill was introduced in the Senate on April 1. It currently has more than 80 co-sponsors from both parties. This demonstrates broad bipartisan support, which makes it possible to overcome even a presidential veto. Among the main provisions of the bill is the introduction of 500% duties on imports of goods from countries that continue to buy Russian oil, gas, uranium and other resources. In addition, the bill contains provisions on primary and secondary sanctions against Russian oligarchs and banking sector and energy companies. The sanctions include asset freezes, transaction bans and significant restrictions on international cooperation with Russia. The day before, Donald Trump had a meeting with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. He noted that the United States is really ready to provide weapons to Ukraine. The weapons will be sold through NATO and Europe will allocate funds for the purchase of weapons for Ukraine.
We are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it. Our last meeting of a month ago was very successful in that they agreed to 5%, which is more than $1 trillion a year, so they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. They have a lot of money and they want to do it. They feel very strongly about it, and we feel strongly about it too. But we're in for a lot of money and we don't want to do anymore, and we can't. But we make the best, and we're going to be sending the best to NATO, and in some cases to maybe, at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they'll be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it. It's going to be coordinated by NATO, and they're going to work very much with Matt Whitaker, who's right here, who's a great ambassador, and Matt's going to be coordinated. You better do a good job, Matt.
I will.
But Matt's going to coordinate. He's a very talented guy. He's going to coordinate everything. So in a nutshell, we're going to make top-of-the-line weapons, and they'll be sent to NATO. NATO may choose to have certain of them sent to other countries where we can get a little additional speed, where the country will release something and it'll be mostly in the form of a replacement. And I'd like to have Mark, and again, just a highly respected, pretty young guy, for having had the career that he's had, because he had an amazing career before going to NATO, so and we spent a lot of time together over the last couple of months.
Mark Rutte thanked Trump for the decision and noted that in Putin's place, he would think carefully about the need to continue the war.
This is really big. You called me on Thursday that you had taken a decision. And the decision is that you want Ukraine, what it needs to have to maintain, to be able to defend itself against Russia, but you do want Europeans to pay for it, which is totally logical. And this is building on the tremendous success of the NATO summit. The 5%, but also the decision to keep Ukraine strong and the decision to increase our defense industrial production. So based on that, that was Europe stepping up. This is again Europeans stepping up. So I've been in contact with many countries. I can tell you that at this moment Germany, massively, but also Finland and Denmark and Sweden and Norway, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Canada. They all want to be part of this, and this is only the first wave. There will be more. So what we will do is work through the NATO systems to make sure that we know what Ukrainians need, so that we can make packages. Of course, in a way, we discussed it this morning with Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon, in a way that, of course, the US will keep on its stockpiles necessary to defend this country. That's absolutely clear. But it will mean that Ukraine can get its hands on really massive numbers of military equipment, both for air defense, but also missiles, ammunition, etc., etc. So if I was Vladimir Putin today and hear you speaking about what you are planning to do in 50 days and this announcement, I would reconsider whether I should not take negotiations about Ukraine more seriously than I was doing at the moment, if I was Vladimir Putin. But when I'm Ukraine, I think this is really great news for that. So I really want to thank you for that. And it means the Europeans paying for it. And again, I mentioned all these countries, we will deal with that. And exactly as you said, it might also mean that countries will move equipment fast into Ukraine and then the US later backfilling it because speed is of the essence here. So really, thank you. This is important.
You did a great job.
The delivery of the promised Patriots to Ukraine could take months. This was stated by German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius in the interview with The Telegraph. After conversation with Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, Germany offered to buy 2 American Patriot air defense systems for delivery to Ukraine. Pistorius has stated that the first of this system will not be delivered over several months. Instead, Trump, as I said earlier, said batteries would begin arriving in Ukraine within days to protect its cities from Russian bombing. The United States is ending free military aid to Ukraine, but will prioritize the supply of weapons to Kyiv. According to the agreement with NATO, the European countries and Canada will pay for the weapons for Ukraine. This was stated by the permanent representative of the United States to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, on Fox News.
President Trump has made a very smart decision and an agreement with NATO, which says Europe and Canada will pay for the weapons. The United States will manufacture them. Obviously, we make the best weapons systems in the world, and everyone wants them, and we're going to prioritize those going to Ukraine. And what this says also to Vladimir Putin, I think, is very loud and clear, which is, we've given you a chance for peace. President Trump is a peacemaker, but if you want war, we will arm Ukraine, and Europe will pay for it. It's actually, I think, a great step in ultimately bringing this war to a conclusion, to an end. In the last 18 months, Russia has gained about 1% of Ukrainian land. I mean, they're making no success. They're losing thousands of soldiers every single day, and way too many, private citizens in Ukraine and the big cities are being injured. So I think this is a great next step in finally ending this war. But again, if Vladimir Putin wants to continue to fight on the battlefields of Ukraine, the United States of America will sell Europe armaments so that they can be used by Ukraine to defend themselves. President Trump said today, $350 billion of American taxpayers' money has gone to the support Ukraine. No longer, but at the same time, we're not cutting them off from weapons, and we're also not making the United States of America less secure. We're going to make sure that strategically we have enough that we need, and then anything else that we can make, manufacture, and sell to our European allies and give to Ukraine, I think is a perfect and elegant solution for this.
Kit Kellogg is currently in Ukraine. The head of the main Directorate of Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, took part in a briefing for the special representative of the U.S. President, Kit Kellogg. A joint briefing of representatives of the security and defense sector of Ukraine, chaired by the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Rustem Umerov, for the U.S. delegation, headed by the special representative of the U.S. President for Ukraine, Kit Kellogg, was held in Kyiv.
The head of the main directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Lieutenant General Kirylo Budanov, and his Deputy Major General Vadim Skibitsky took part in the event together with the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Oleksandr Syrsky, the Chief of the General Staff, Major General Andriy Gniatov, as well as representatives of the intelligence community. The American side was briefed on the current operational situation, an assessment of the plans of the aggressor state, the Russian Federation, until 2036, as well as data on the Kremlin's preparation for an armed conflict not only against Ukraine, but also against NATO countries. The Kremlin's imperial ambitions are not limited to Ukraine. They encompass all of Europe. However, with the support of the United States, we are able to stop Russia and nullify its military potential, emphasized Kirylo Budanov. The head of the main intelligence directorate expressed gratitude to the government and people of the United States for their continued political, economic, and military support for Ukraine. Russia recognizes only force, and it is through it that we will achieve lasting peace.
Russia has already reacted to the measures that Donald Trump took the day before. Medvedev made a statement which I will quote. Trump announced a declarative ultimatum to the Kremlin. The world shuddered, expecting the consequences. The militant European Union is disappointed. Russia didn't notice him. Lavrov, on the other hand, seems to be mocking Trump, commenting on the statements of the American president. He noted that Trump needs to clarify what he meant by the 50 days. After all, Trump has already spoken about other terms before.
We want to understand what is behind this statement. 50 days were before, and there were 24 hours, and there were 100 days. We have been through all this, and we really want to understand what drives the President of the United States. It is clear that he is under enormous, I would say, indecent pressure from the European Union and the current NATO leadership, which unceremoniously support Zelensky's demands to continue pumping him with modern, including offensive weapons, at the expense of more and more damage to taxpayers in Western countries.
Moreover, Lavrov once again spoke about the peace talks in Istanbul and accused Ukraine of not wanting peace.
If they declare that the format has been exhausted, this means, in addition to a disregard for their citizens, also an unwillingness to negotiate. Probably Macron and Starmer, Ursula von der Leyen and other Merz forbid them to do this again, when all these characters simply unanimously demand to urgently pump Ukraine with additional offensive weapons. Well, the level of the Ukrainian delegation, it will change now. Umarov, a former defense minister, is traveling to join his family in the United States as ambassador. And, you see, the third round of talks, which we proposed to start the week of June 22, is still not mentioned in any Ukrainian statements, in any advice given to them by their Western curators. And now, it means that the negotiator has still left.
Meanwhile, in Skabyeva's propaganda broadcasts, the occupiers find out why, in fact, they went to war against Ukraine. And it turns out that the Russians are once again being told that there was no other option but to go to a foreign land to kill Ukrainians.
We are not there for this. We did not go there to make things worse for ourselves. We said, we don't want to come to an agreement. We will force you to come to an agreement. There is no other option. We can only agree with the position of the strong. Yes, it will be bad for us. We will continue to fight. We will, unfortunately, equip our industry according to the military model, but we have no other option. Look at Iran. Look at other countries that you haven't even asked. Look at Libya. Look at Iraq, tumbling for how many years?
Thank you, dear viewers, for watching this video. Please like this video and share your thoughts on the latest news. See you again soon.